Welcome back to Brain Strength, this series where this average fool tries to teach you a thing or two about sports psychology so that you can be the best version of you. I'm your host, RJ Lynch, and with my master's in sports exercise and performance psychology, let's get this thing rolling. In this episode of Brain Strength, we're going to be going back to our sports. We're going to be talking about the psychology of track athletes, some of the common issues that I see in it, how we can address it, and just overall how a track athlete can be the best version of them. So with this, usually I like to start with the personalities of different sports, kind of what you see, what makes up a great track athlete. But the problem is, with the way track is designed, I really can't narrow in on a singular personality or a set of personality traits that really make them great. There's such an eclectic level of personality, so many different people doing it. It's such an individual sport where you just get a lot of these people that don't fit in anywhere else. They come into track and they do fantastic. So trying to really narrow it down is a bit difficult. Secondly, because of the different events in track, there are just different things that would make this list too long, too cumbersome, and to the point where it's like, did I really learn everything, or did I just learn that everybody can be a great track athlete? Now, with that said, there are a few things that hold true across all sports. They've got to be competitive somewhat. They got to be mentally tough. But other than that, it can vary because you have sprinters who tend to be a little bit more bombastic. They tend to be a little bit more the loud ones, the ones that you're like, these are the showy, flashy off type. Also, from my knowledge of a lot of them, they're usually not as mentally tough per se as a distance runner who's running kilometers at a time for their race. You only have to be so tough to get yourself through 10 seconds of running. I say that as a former sprinter myself, and just knowing like I had it a lot easier than distance runners. And any sprinter that wants to argue with me on that, come on, bro. We know. So there really isn't one set of personality, one thing that really says this is going to make you great. So let's get into the more important stuff. Let's look at the common issues that I see that maybe I have experienced myself, the things I've coached people through, so that we can really understand where to go. So the big things I usually see come down to pre-race anxiety, pre-event jitters, whatever you want to call it, dealing with the spotlight, being able to shift focus, being afraid of failure, being able to own your lane, and then finally running your race. Some of these have a lot of overlap, so you might hear some repeated themes, but each of them kind of has their own separate piece as well, so I really want to get into it. So issue number one, those pre-race jitters, pre-event jitters, and it's that sudden feeling of anxiety that strikes prior to running or jumping into your event, getting into finals for field events, taking a jump. But as soon as it kind of starts, a lot of times it'll leave you. So these pre-race jitters are usually those ones that just get you kind of very anxious at the start. But once you start running or once you start competing, you're like, okay, I'm fine now. These symptoms often look like throwing up before a race, not sleeping well the night before, being overly cautious about things, starting maybe a bit more timid because you're just nervous to start. How do I help you with this, or what are some things that you can do? One of the big ones is always mindfulness. A lot of our pre-race jitters, our anxieties come from our thought of either things that have happened in the past or futures that we think could happen if XYZ happens. Mindfulness brings us back to the moment and reminds us that the past doesn't matter anymore, and there's no guarantee that XYZ is going to happen. So I'm just going to focus on right now and do the thing. So just gets you out of your head, gets you out of thinking about what could go wrong, or helps you get into the next step, which is the reframing. So you're able to notice the fact that I am present, I am anxious, but I'm able to recognize that anxiousness and excitement can look very similar. The symptoms of being very sweaty, of being kind of jittery and nervous, those are things that you'll see in excitement as well. Your heart will pump faster in both. And because you've done your mindfulness, you're able to take the step back and like, I can recognize my heart is beating fast. My palms are sweaty, knees weak, mom's spaghetti. All those things are going on right now. I'm able to recognize it and say like, okay, this is nervousness, but I'm also excited. I'm able to tell myself I am excited. And then the other thing that you can do is really establish a good pre-performance routine. I'm always big on making sure it's routine and not a ritual. Make it something that you do, not something that you rely on. A ritual is something that you rely on and attribute your success to. A routine is just the steps you take to get you prepared to do the thing. And this pre-performance routine should involve things that just help you recenter, refocus, and get your mind right. So it could be how you tie your shoes, taking a breath, how your block starts go before a race, how many strides you take, all these things where it's like, I do the same thing most of the time, and all these other times I've had success, so I'm going to have success again here. I was always big when I've coached athletes, especially sprinters, is do what you're going to do in meet as much as you can at practice. So what do I mean by that? So when we're doing block starts at practice, I want you to go through your same routine that you would do at meet during the practice. So then when you do it at the meet, you can have that little signal in your brain that says, oh, this is the same thing I do every day at practice. Why am I so worried about how this is going to go? I know how I am. I know I'm capable. So then it just kind of breaks down those barriers that we set up in our brain that says, ooh, this is competition. It's so different than practice, when it really isn't. The next thing is dealing with the pressure, dealing with the spotlight. Because of the individual nature of track, while still being a team sport, there can be a lot of moments where we have this heavy load on our shoulders, where we're like, I don't know if I can deal with being in the spotlight. I don't know how I feel about being the anchor in this race, because that means it's all going to come up to me. Nobody else can make up for my mistakes. And we see this a lot when the athletes start shying away from opportunities. I always love athletes that say like, I want to be anchor. I want to be first leg. Put me in the moment, coach. Put me in that moment. If the athlete's like, no, I much prefer to be this leg or that leg. Yeah. And when you suggest like, yeah, but I think you'd be really good for an anchor or leadoff. And they're like, yeah, no, I don't think so. That tells me they don't like that pressure. They can't handle the spotlight at that moment. If there's someone that always has injuries that kind of just pop up every now and then at important times, and you're like, huh. Now, believe all your athletes when they say they're injured. Don't make them train through injuries. But if you start noticing a pattern of this injury keeps happening just at this time, and then they seem to get better before this, it might be your signal of just having that sit-down conversation with either yourself or if you're a coach with your athlete of being like, are these injuries popping up because you're trying to avoid a moment? And then finally, just underperforming. When they're doing things, when the pressure's on, they don't show up. That's going to be a symptom that they have troubles with the spotlight. So how do I help, or how do I suggest athletes to go about things? The first thing is goal setting. So one of the reasons we struggle with dealing with the spotlight is we have this goal, or we have this perception in our mind that if I am in the spotlight, I have to do this. I have to achieve this. I have to satisfy my ego that says I am capable of being in this moment. Instead of being like, it doesn't matter if 1,000 people are watching me or no one's watching me. My goal is to hit this performance mark, or my goal is to fix this thing in my jump. So I'm going to work on that. If I achieve, that means all my other performance marks have come together to help me achieve. Then we evaluate our self-talk. Are you defeating yourselves before you ever get in the moment? Do you sit there and say to yourself, I can't handle this. I can't do this. This is more for this person. This person's so much stronger, so much faster than I. Why would I be in that spot? If you're already defeating yourselves there, we have to evaluate and say, hey, take a breath. What are some positive things, or what are some other things we can say to ourselves to keep us going in the moment? And then lastly, one that I tell people a lot is creating an alter ego. So sometimes as an athlete, or sometimes just as a human being, we can be very meek. We can be very shy. We can be someone that's like, I'm not that aggressive. And that's fine. That's a great thing to be. But in sport, sometimes we have to be able to turn that notch, turn it up a notch, and be like, I am going there. I am the best. I am great. I am this cocky SOB that no one's going to beat. And for those of us who are a little bit more shy, a little bit more introverted, trying to get that on our own doesn't always work. So we have to find a way to put on that mask, to put on that alter ego and become Black Mamba, becoming this, where it's like, I am no longer just this person. I am now this, and this thing that I've become is able to handle these moments. The next is being able to shift focus. So if you are a runner and a jumper, you might have to go from one attempt of your jump to race back to your next attempt of a jump, and your brain can get very sideways. You can be very stuck at failure. If you have a bad jump, you can then have a bad run, which then leads to another bad jump, and it becomes a snowball effect. And we have to do something about that because, especially as high schoolers, or middle schoolers, you're going to have to shift a lot. You're not professional Olympians who just have one event that's all you have to worry about. What are symptoms that this is you? Your first attempt or so after checking back in is really poor. It's really crappy. You're so focused and talking to your event coach at the new thing about, why was my run so bad? I should have been so much faster, as you're getting ready to go long or triple jump. Like, why are you worried about how you just ran? Focus on your field event. Or you're just frustrated without knowing the reason. Like, you're just angry at everything. You're like, why am I so angry? Because you're holding on to what happened over here, even though you're here now. So what things I like to do here is, once again, mindfulness, because mindfulness is about being present, being in the moment. What's the best way to get out of the past is be in the present, taking the breaths to reset yourself, recenter yourself. Then in addition to that, using certain words, using visual cues, using something that's going to remind yourself of shift, falter now, jumper now, things like that just remind yourself that I am no longer a runner. I am no longer this. I am a thrower now. Using those things to help you recenter and get yourself there. Or visual cues, like maybe the way you have something on one of your shoes, one of your spikes, of what you're focusing on. The next one is fear of failure. Track, unlike a lot of other sports, is not one where mistakes can be hid. You can make a bad pass in basketball and your teammate can bail you out. In track, if you're sprinting and you do something wrong, there's no one that's going to make up for you. You have to find ways there. So we have this perception that then we have to be perfect. So all of a sudden, during a jump attempt, during the throw, we feel something a little bit off in our attempt. We're like, oh, I got to bail out. I got to run through the pit. I can't do this. Instead of just saying, screw it, I'm going up. There's usually a lot of hesitation, overthinking, tension, things along that line. So what do? One of the things I have people do is imagery, but I would do what I more specifically call like recovery imagery, but not recovery as if recovering from an injury. I'm talking about recovering from a mistake or an imperfection. So you're going through, let's say, a long jump imagery script. And as you're running, I'll have you imagine all of a sudden there's a gust of wind that hits you. So you get a little thrown off, or your steps feel a little bit off. Instead of just having you bail out or walk out, I'm going to have you continue and correct yourself. So you're recovering from the mistake. You're recovering from whatever knocked you off your balance. The next up is saying more process goals. So saying there and being like, not everything has to be perfect. I don't have to PR at every meet. I don't have to win every meet, but I'm going to focus on this one little thing. I'm going to make that my center of attention. Next up is self-compassion. We have to be okay with our failures. We have to be kind to ourselves. We have to forgive ourselves because we all go through things. So just training that, building our practice on compassion and gratitude is a great way to help us out. Next up, understanding the controllables. In the sport, you can't control which way the wind's going. Sometimes they may reverse pitch, sometimes they might. But you're just going to have to deal with whatever your hand you're dealt. So you have to learn how to focus on, okay, I can't control that, but I can control my steps, I can control how I adjust, I can control my mindset, I can control these things. And then have moments of just good enough training. So like reminding yourself that, okay, that was not perfect. I'm identifying these as things I have to work on, but that's a good enough attempt to still send it. I am still going to be safe. I'm still going to be able to give my best. So it's a good enough one by knowing that I'm going to correct that next time. The next thing is what I like to call owning your lane, or it can really just be called confidence. There's a lot of athletes that can just struggle to really be in that lane, be the person that takes up space, that makes noise, that how they come across with things. There's the distance runner that is very easy to get boxed out of or get stuck in holes because they're not willing to push through people. They're not willing to do this. They're not willing to exert themselves a lot. And then also the other issue with owning your lane is becoming too overconfident, things where you're too loud, you're too obnoxious, you're too over the top, where it's like, bro, you're compensating for something, aren't you? And how do we recognize this? Is they become very timid. They're hiding themselves, or they're too over the top. A lot of times when we're not confident, we hide our lack of confidence by making it sound like we're confident, or making people think it by just the way we talk and boast about it. But then the big one I see is just not being aggressive with technique, not going after the board, not going towards the pit, not running hard, driving out of the blocks. So the thing here is create that alter ego. If you're someone that struggles with confidence, have that person, have that superhero you can become that is confident. Practice good body language. If you're someone, what's one way that I know you're not confident or owning your lane is you're here a lot. Heads down, arms crossed, shoulders in. I know that like you're trying to protect yourself. This is a safe self-hug position that says, I need to give myself comfort. Versus opening up, hands on your hips, being like, I got this. Looking ahead, being there, that creates confidence. Even if you're not mentally confident, just position your body in a way that is more confident will feed you. Then we work on self-talk, imagery, goal setting, these different things where we just either say, see, or plan for things that are going to make us feel more confident. And then finally is running your race or doing your event. So often we focus on, I've got to take first, I got to beat this person. That because we're so focused there, we lose track of ourselves. So all of a sudden, if we get stuck in the back of a pack, or if someone has a big PR jump that maybe is wind assisted. I've seen people that have no business winning meets because all of a sudden they get a heck of a tailwind, so they just jump a foot farther than they should. And in high school, a lot of times you don't have the wind gauge, so you just got to deal with it. So all of a sudden, if you're one of these people that struggles with running your race, it's like, that person should not be in front of me. They are only there because of the wind race. They're only this, and this. If I start hearing that, or if I start seeing that, I know you're done. I might as well just be like, okay, don't take another jump because you've already given up. You've already lost. You've already created excuses. So how do we fix this? How do we get over the fact that winning is not the only thing? It's about you. It's about doing your best. Process-oriented goals. Worried about, can you get PR? Can you fix this technical thing? Can you give me good efforts? Those things you can control. You can't control how the other person says. You can't control how much they're training. You can't control what wind assistance they get or referee gives them a call. You can't control that. So control the things you can work on and set goals around them. Use mindfulness. Once again, worry about yourself. Worry about your present moment, where you're feeling. And then finally, I look at our motivation assessment reframing. I'm going to look at you and be like, so why is winning so important? Why? Because it really isn't. Yeah, maybe at your championship track meets, winning can be important, but winning the Joe Schmo Invitational, it doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. What's going to matter more to your coaches? What's going to matter more to possible college recruiters? It's going to matter more to things along that nature, and things that you're going to remember longer is how you're performing. And when I say that is, are you PRing? Are you improving each meet? Or are you someone that comes in, hits your PR in the first meet, and the rest of the season you suck? That tells people a lot more than how many first place you take. So how can we reframe your motivation to be in on being the best jumper you can be versus being the best jumper at this meet, or being the best runner at this meet? Let's reframe that motivation so that we can focus in on what's important to you and what's going to matter more to people in the long run. So what's going to make you a successful track athlete? Every failure, every moment is an opportunity. You're confident, but you're aware of your faults. So you don't overboast to hide things. You know who you are and you own your lane. You're motivated to grow and achieve. You don't want to just win meets, because you can go to crappy meets and win them without actually ever getting better. No, you want to grow as an athlete and you want to achieve because of that growth. It's growth before achievement. You own your space, you're able to shift focus, and then you just run your race. Make your jump, make your throw. But that's all I have for today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us here at Your Brain on Track. And if there's anything I said today that you found offensive or didn't like, I hope you can forgive me. If you say anything in the comments that I find offensive, no, I'll forgive you. Till next time, brain strength, out.